Namaste and welcome to Explore and Restore the Pelvic Floor. This is your practical class, and you can do this class if you're pregnant. I'll show you some variations. However, this class is mostly designed for you if you're postnatal, perimenopausal, postmenopausal, and you'd like a simple restorative and practical experience of revitalizing and relaxing the pelvic floor. So you can use either cushions or a bolster for this practice. It's also great to have a blanket available and some yoga blocks if possible. I'll also be showing you a method of using the belt, but if you don't have a belt, there will be alternatives. So we're going to take a reclined Baddha Konasana position to start with. So sitting at the base of your bolster, little toe sides of the feet touching, knees wide. And you're welcome to strap in here if you do have a belt. Place the belt around the lowest part of the lumbar spine, your lower back. And the belt will be lightly pressing on the inner thighs. Thread the belt around the little toe side of the feet. Strap the belt in so that the tail of the belt can be pulled towards you. Rest your thighs on blocks or pillows if you like for a more relaxed and supported position. Take the hands either side of the body, tuck the tailbone under and peel the spine as you unroll the spine onto the bolster. Now, if you are pregnant, you may need a little more height behind your back just to make sure that you don't have too much pressure on the abdomen, especially if you're in that third trimester. Otherwise, flat on the bolster is fine, allowing the spine to settle. And it's here that we start to really arrive in the practice, and that we really start to tune into a sense of lengthening the breath. Allowing the breath to grow long and soft. Feeling the spine really settle into the supporting surface now. Softening the area between the eyebrows, letting the eyebrows and forehead relax. Softening the area between your collarbones, letting the left and right collarbones separate gently on the breath. Allowing the bones of the pelvis to soften and open, particularly the two hip bones at the front of your body first of all. So if you are placing your fingertips on the bony prominences of the hips or the front of the pelvis, these two bony points are softening and opening a little like a fan towards the ceiling or the sky to allow more of the breath to enter the lower abdominal area. We're noticing the area between the knees soften and relax and lengthen. On every exhalation, the area between the knees softens even more as you relax onto the blocks or the cushions. And finally now, turning your mind's eye towards the base of the pelvis, allowing your left and right sitting bones to soften, to lengthen, and to open. As you reach your breath gently into the pelvis, noticing the pelvis expand on the inhalation, soften on the exhalation. Letting go of any resistance in the pelvic floor area now, as you allow the pelvic floor to accept the breath, to accept the expansiveness of the breath on the inhalation and the softening and lengthening on the exhalation. We'll gently start to come out of the position now by turning the palms down, gently pressing up to sitting, unhooking your belts and unstrapping the belt if you have got that one strapped up, because we'll be using that next. And again, we'll have a variation for those of you who may not have access to a belt right now. Just move the blocks to either side. We will use those or the cushions next. If you do need to have your torso slightly upright, if you're pregnant, keep the bolster and pillows where they are, or take them to one side so that you can rest with your blanket at the head end of your mat. Taking your belt around the ball of your right foot. And if you don't have a belt, your option is to gently place the hands around the thigh or to clasp the hands behind the knee. Because what we're going to start with is a very gentle massage into the hip by drawing some circles with your right heel on the ceiling. And if you do have your belt, you can use the belt for this massage into the hip joint, imagining the ball and socket joint of the hip as you gently glide the ball of the hip into the socket and then turn the circles into the opposite direction now. Sweeping all of the fluid in the hip joint, around the hip joint, similarly to how you would put a roll-on deodorant into the armpit. And then let's take some figure eights now. So draw the number 8 onto the ceiling using your heel. And this is just supporting you to start to gain some warmth, some nourishment, some access to the deep muscles in the pelvis and the pelvic floor. And then take the belt into your right hand and place your left hand onto your left hip, and then very gently allow the heel, the right heel, to come out to one side. Now here is where your block may be handy. You may wish to rest your thigh onto the block here, or you may feel happy to use the belt as your suspension, or you may need to use your right hand on the outer thigh to support this stretch if you don't have the belt. But either way, keep the left hip anchored onto the floor, because this is an inner right thigh stretch that also extends into the right pelvic floor area. So you'll notice here that there's a lengthening happening between the pubic bone and right sitting bone, and between the right sitting bone and the tailbone. So the whole right side of your pelvic floor is actually receiving a gentle stretch here. And we need to hold this stretch for at least 5 breaths. And then we're going to take the heel back up to center, take the belt in your left hand now, and this time allow the right hip to lift as you cross the right leg over the midline. So the whole right outer quadrant or lower quadrant of the lumbar spine will actually be in a beautiful stretch here, but we're also stretching the outer right thigh area. And it's those deep muscles in the right hip, your obturator internus, your piriformis. These also need a really good stretch in order for us to have good pelvic floor function. And quite often these muscles are tight. So we hold our stretch for at least 5 breaths to make sure that these muscles are able to fully lengthen and relax. And then bring the leg up to the center and gently draw the toes towards you. Again, if you don't have your belt, you can clasp the hands behind you, and we're just going to gently draw the toes, the ball of the foot towards you until you feel the stretch in the back of the thigh your hamstrings. And you may like to keep a very small knee bend here if that's more comfortable for you. And holding for 2 more breaths here. Keeping the neck and shoulders nice and soft. And then releasing the belt, sliding your right leg alongside the left one. And then let's take the left ball of the foot into the belt. Or again, clasping behind the thigh if you don't have a belt. And then let's take some small circles with the heel onto the ceiling. Gentle circles. Nourishing the deep hip socket. Changing the direction of your circles. Feeling the warmth, the recharge, deep into the hip. Noticing any areas of tension. Keeping the breath long and soft and keeping the face nice and relaxed. And then creating some figure eights on the ceiling. Writing those figure eights with your heel. Controlling the deep, fine muscles around the pelvis and pelvic floor. Noticing if this side feels different to your right side. Perhaps it's easier, harder, weaker, stronger. And then take your belt in your left hand, anchor your right hip with your right hand, and then very gently on your exhalation, take the leg out to the side. The minute the hip actually lifts off the floor, that is your end point of the stretch. That is where you will keep the stretch. If you don't have your belt, please place your left hand on the outer thigh to guide your leg out to the side. Otherwise, use the belt as your leverage point to hold the stretch. Again, if you like, you can place a block or a pillow underneath the outer thigh if you would prefer to really experience a full relaxation in this stretch. And we will be tuning in here to the area between the pubic bone and the left sitting bone and tailbone. So the whole left side of the pelvic floor, if we were to section it into left and right sides, that whole left triangle would be in a lovely stretch now. Keeping the breath long and soft, and then lifting the leg back to center, taking the belt with your right hand to cross the leg over the midline, across the midline, allowing your left hip to lift so that you can fully take the leg into the stretch to the outer left thigh and to the left hamstring, deep into the left buttock area. We're targeting the muscles in the hip, in the pelvis, that so often get very tight and impact our pelvic floor. If we have suppleness and flexibility in these muscles, this can often help us restore the pelvic floor. Lifting the leg back up again, and once again we're stretching into the hamstrings by drawing the ball of the foot towards you, the belt towards you slightly as you feel the stretch in the back of the left thigh. 5 long hamstring stretching breaths. The hamstrings being tight can tip the pelvis into a posterior tilt, and for those of you who have devoured the theory on this course, you will understand that tight hamstrings and a posterior tilt can actually affect the positioning of your pelvic organs, and this can also create a higher risk of pelvic organ prolapse. So we're correcting any areas that might have become a little fixed, a little tight, a little unforgiving, and then release your belt and slide your legs alongside one another Taking a brief pause to feel into both legs now, the spaciousness, the length, the softness, and then roll onto your right side and come around onto your tummy. So here on our bellies, prone lying, if you are in your second or third trimester and you have a big belly, what I would suggest you do here is pad the left side of your belly up with some cushions. And those of you who aren't pregnant don't need to use cushions for this one. Take your elbows underneath your shoulders. Pop those to one side. Take your elbows beneath your shoulders and your forearms are around about parallel to one another, with the middle fingers parallel to one another and to the edges of your mat. Let's take the right knee all the way out to the side at a right angle. So this is known as the half frog pose. And what this will start to do here is open up the right groin area. So we can, if you wish to have a greater sense of softening, relaxation here, stack one hand on top of the other and rest your forehead onto the hands as you allow the right groin area, right hip to soften towards the floor as you take the stretch into the adductor muscles, into the area between the pubic bone, right sitting bone, right tailbone. This is the half frog posture. Notice on your exhalation how you can really start to melt and soften into the groin, into the right pelvic floor. Lifting the head, coming back up onto the forearms, releasing the right leg back to the left, just to meet the left, and then taking your left leg now out at a right angle, right out from your left hip, and repeating on the opposite side. So your lower leg is very comfortable against the floor. If you're having any problems with discomfort on the knee, please place a blanket or some padding underneath the knee. And if you want to really feel the softening to its maximum capacity in the left groin and left pelvic floor area, we can actually stack one hand on top of the other, resting the forehead so that the upper body is completely relaxed. But for some of you, you may actually wish to have the gentle posture correction that comes from staying on the elbows. Two options there. Melting your left groin and noticing some softening and lengthening occurring between the pubic bone, left sitting bone, and tailbone. Two more long, soft breaths here. And then let's come back up onto the forearms. And we're going to take the left leg to meet the right leg now, and then come up onto all fours while you take your knees nice and wide. So wrists beneath the shoulders, knees nice and wide here, big toes to touch. Lower your sitting bones now down towards the heels, and then very gently walk the hands forwards as far as you feel comfortable. As you tip the sitting bones and the tailbone down towards the floor, you're going to reach the fingertips out in front, but keep some activity in the elbows. So we're not just softening and collapsing into the arms here. We are actually keeping our arms active. We're turning the elbow creases towards the ceiling, and then we're lowering the forehead down towards either the floor or to a block to provide us with some support here in a forward fold. And here in our pelvis, we're actually receiving a beautiful, glorious opening into the pelvic diamond. So if you tune in now with your mind's eye to the pelvic floor, you will notice a lengthening between the pubic bone and the tailbone. As you reach the tailbone down towards the floor, you're also reaching the pubic bone towards the sternum, towards the breastbone as you reach the fingertips forward. So there's a lengthening between pubic bone and tailbone. There's also a softening, a lengthening, and opening between the left and right sitting bones. So the whole diamond shape at the base of the pelvis is in a gentle stretch here. So if you're holding on to any tension in the base of the pelvis, this is a lovely restorative opportunity to lengthen, to soften. And we're not actually having any pressure from the abdominal organs. So the organs are forward facing and they're no longer putting gravitational force through the pelvic floor. So this gives the pelvic floor a chance to rest and relax. Walk the hands back towards you. Come up onto all fours now. And we'll take this opening into the pelvic floor with some breaths into Marjariyasana now. So make sure your middle fingers are parallel to one another and that your knees are beneath the hips. As you inhale, tuck the toes under, expand the upper chest forward, and notice how the pelvic floor expands as you inhale. As you exhale, draw your abdominal navel towards the spine as you round the upper back. And also notice how the whole diamond shape of the pelvic floor actually contracts slightly as you draw the abdominals in, pelvic floor towards the spine, and then reverse that on your inhalation. So tuck the toes under, expand the pelvic floor, expand the upper chest, lengthen through the front of the body. And then exhale, draw transverse abdominis, pelvic floor muscles in. So this is Marjariyasana with a new focus through the pelvic floor. It supports you to tether your transverse abdominis and your pelvic floor muscles to a correct relationship or synergy with one another. We're just going to repeat this for 10 breaths. To really feel that relationship between these two muscles. As you expand the abdominals, so too does the pelvic floor expand and relax. As you exhale, abdominals gently draw towards the spine and pelvic floor contracts very lightly. Inhale, expand, reverse the action. Exhale, draw abdominals, pelvic floor towards the spine. Notice an opening of the pelvic diamond, an expansion of the bony points of the pelvis, and notice the contraction of those bony points towards the center line of the body, towards the center point of the pelvic floor. Just 2 more breaths. Coming back to neutral, and in the neutral position, creating some very light circles with the tailbone. So you're drawing the circles with the tailbone now, loosening up, revitalizing the muscles around the waist, creating that circular motion so that you can gain access and control of some of those finer and deeper muscles, and then change the direction of your circles. This is really great for loosening up any tension in the waist as well. And then what we'll also do now is some figure eights of the pelvis. So imagine that you're looping one loop of the 8 around the right hip and one loop of the 8 around the left hip. So nourishing circles, right hip to left hip. Right hip, figure 8 to left hip. And then we're going to come into an interesting name, the old dog, or puppy pose, as I prefer to call it, where we're actually going to walk the hands out in front and keep the hips stacked over your knees, and then lower the forehead down towards the floor. So as you lower the forehead to the floor, you'll notice that the gravitational forces on the body will tip everything down towards the wrist, towards the head, and we'll open the armpits, but keep some activity in the arms so that you're not putting too much pressure on the head and neck. And here, as we tune into the pelvic floor, we're noticing how luxurious it feels to be in a semi-inversion where none of our pelvic floor organs or abdominal organs are pressing on the pelvic floor. So here is an opportunity, once again, to sense some spaciousness in the base of the pelvis. Notice that we can actually still reach the breath towards the pelvis and expand on our inhalation. Gently draw the pelvic floor towards you on your exhalation, towards the spine on the exhalation lightly, using gravity to assist you. And we may even notice here that we can imagine there's a ball of golden light, silvery golden light, between the sitting bones, between the pubic bone and tailbone, right in the center of the base of the pelvis here. And that as we inhale, the ball of light expands. As we exhale, it gently contracts, almost down to a pinprick. And then we inhale, the ball of light expands, around about the size of a tennis ball in its fullness. And as you exhale, you're contracting the ball of light almost down to the pinprick, right into the center of the pelvic floor. Walking the hands back towards you now, and we're going to now be rolling onto our back. Once again, if you need to prop with your bolster or pillows, if you're pregnant, you're welcome to. We're coming onto the back now. We're bringing our right knee towards the chest. We're clasping the hands behind the thigh. If there's no trouble in your knee, you may even like to clasp the hands on top of the knee, but we're going into Upanasana, which is a beautiful posture for gently massaging into the right organs, into the right-sided organs, your liver, your gallbladder. And then taking your right hand onto the right knee, a couple of light circles clockwise and anti-clockwise, and then straightening the knee. And here, if we're able to reach the little toe side of the foot, we're going to be drawing the right knee down towards your right armpit by gently drawing the right little toe side of the foot down towards the armpit. And if you have trouble holding the armpit, you are very welcome to clasp, holding the little toe side, I'm sorry, you're very welcome to clasp behind the right thigh to actually create the stretch. Otherwise, if you're able, holding onto the little toe side of the foot, bringing the stretch into the armpit as you draw the knee towards the armpit. This is half happy baby pose, and this is specifically to give you a stretch from your right tailbone to your right sitting bone. So that whole back right quadrant of the pelvic floor is receiving a stretch here. This is particularly good if you have got some tightness related to an episiotomy or scar tissue. Often the episiotomy is on one side of the pelvic floor. We're holding the stretch for 2 more breaths, keeping the face long and soft, and trying to keep the upper body as relaxed as possible. And then we're going to just return the knee back into Apanasana again, stretching the right knee towards the chest. And then relaxing, releasing the right leg down by your side as you lift the left knee towards you. And again, if you don't have any knee problems, clasp on top of the knee. If you prefer, clasp behind the knee. And we'll gently come into Apanasana on the left side now. The pressure of the left thigh is gently pressing into the organs on the left side. So left stomach, the pancreas, the spleen. Straightening your knee, or lightly straightening the knee, bringing the left hand around the left little toe side of the foot and drawing the left knee towards your left armpit now. Keeping the right leg anchored onto the floor into the extended position. And once again, if this is just too strong on you and it just feels like it's really uncomfortable for you, you're very welcome to clasp behind the thigh to just draw that knee out to the left slightly towards the left armpit. Otherwise, left hand on the little toe side and feeling the stretch now from the left sitting bone in towards the tailbone. And bringing the posture back to Apanasana briefly, and then straightening your left leg alongside the right leg, and then very gently bending both knees and lifting both knees towards your chest, and very lightly circling the knees around anti-clockwise or clockwise, and then changing the direction of your circles. Okay, so we're going to be doing the happy baby pose on both sides now. So bringing your left little toe side and left knee towards your armpit, and then right little toe side, right knee towards the right armpit, and very gently stretching the pelvic floor, noticing that this actually lengthens you between the left and right sitting bones as you draw the little toes towards you. And if you're holding on and you notice that there's this sense of protectiveness, what we're going to do on our next breaths is soften the pelvic floor on your exhalation. So you're just allowing the area between the left and right sitting bones to soften and release, letting go of any tension as you exhale. And very gently now bringing the little toe sides of your feet together, the soles of the feet together, keeping the hands clasped and the knees wide. And we're very lightly drawing the heels towards the pelvis now, towards the pubic bone, with the knees nice and wide. So it's a Baddha Konasana in a reclined position here for a few breaths. Taking the feet now onto the floor, and we're going to use our blocks or our bolster to come into a supported inversion now. So we can use the block on its lowest edge to start with to build ourselves up for this practice. Now again, if you're in your third trimester and you wish to just remain propped in a slightly upright position, you're welcome to stay there for now. For those of us who are able to lie on our backs, we will actually either take the block onto its lowest edge or onto its medium edge, or you can use pillows here to come into a supported bridge pose for a few breaths, and to also allow gravity to gently draw the organs away from the pelvic floor muscles so that the pelvic floor muscles can have a little bit of a break from those gravitational forces. Every single day, if we're able to either get into this semi-inverted position, or if we're able to put our legs up the wall, this will help us enormously to reverse the effects of gravity on a prolapse of any grade, of any level. And it's here that we may even like to engage in some gentle pelvic floor contractions. So as we inhale, the pelvic floor softens, but as we exhale and extend our exhale, we're drawing the pelvic floor towards the spine. And the inhale is reversing and softening and relaxing and expanding. The exhale is drawing the pelvic floor with the help of gravity towards the spine. 5 more breaths, either in full relaxation or tethering the breath to some pelvic floor contractions, whichever takes your fancy. And some of us may even feel, for the last few breaths, to come onto the highest edge of the block, to really allow gravity to fully support us here. If you have done some active pelvic floor contractions, now is a time to take a minute to find the most comfortable height for your pelvis and to take 1 full minute to fully relax and allow your body to be supported, to allow the pelvic floor to be supported, for gravity to assist both the heart and the pelvic floor, to have a little bit of a rest from all of that consistent work that we need to do against gravity as it takes its toll on our bodies. When you're ready to come out of the posture, we're lifting the pelvis off the block, sliding the block out, and relaxing the spine completely flat for a few breaths, allowing the knees to rest towards one another, maybe walking the feet out slightly wider so the feet are about mat width apart, and taking the palms facing up towards the ceiling, taking a pause for a few moments for the spine to reset, for the pelvis to recalibrate. And then very gently, we're separating the knees, keeping the feet wide, and take the arms wide or in cactus pose, and then very gently roll the knees from right to left. So this is called the windscreen wiper pose. And this is just very gently recalibrating, resetting, and giving the hips a chance to settle back in a rejuvenated way. Then we're going to do some thread the needle. So bring the feet back to hip width apart, cross the left ankle over the right thigh, and then draw the right knee towards you as you thread the clasp of your hands around the right thigh. We're holding this stretch for 5 breaths, and we're mostly targeting the left buttock area of the pelvis. So we're getting a lovely stretch through the glutes and through your piriformis muscle. And again, these muscles can get really tight and stagnant and weak. We're bringing some life. We're enlivening the muscles as well as enabling them to receive some nourishment from the stretching. And then change sides. So uncross your left ankle and cross your right ankle over the left thigh. Thread your hands behind the thigh into a clasp. Notice the stretch in the right buttock, drawing that left knee towards you if you wish to increase the intensity of the stretch, but maintain a comfortable discomfort, which is comfortable enough for you to keep your breath long and soft and your face relaxed. Release the clasp, lower the foot to the floor, uncross the legs, and then let's come on to your right side. Press up into sitting, and we'll take your bolster now so that we can experience a side lying position that will help us work on specifically on left and right side separately. So your bolster will be lengthwise on the mat. You'll sit your right sitting bone on the floor in front of the base of your bolster. Bend your lower leg, your right leg, and rest your left ankle in the arch, the medial arch of your right foot. Take both hands either side of the bolster, and then walk the hands down either side of the bolster. And make a decision here. Again, if you're in your third trimester, you'll probably want to stay here with the right ear resting onto the bolster, so same side as the knees. But some of you may wish to also turn the forehead down, the face downwards. And to complete the twist, some people may feel even okay about turning the cheek so that you're turning the head towards your right shoulder, resting the cheek onto the bolster. But what we're mostly going to tune into here is the left and right pelvic floor areas. So while we're in this position, we're able to experience an interesting phenomenon where your right pelvic floor is being supported by gravity, and where your left pelvic floor area is actually working against gravity. So this can be really helpful if you know that your right pelvic floor, for example, is a little weak, and you wish to use gravity to assist the right pelvic floor, then you could create an opportunity for some contractions here with gravitational assistance. So as we inhale, we soften and expand into the abdomen pelvic floor. As we exhale, we draw the pelvic floor towards the spine, just noticing how it may feel as there's a subtle difference between your left and right sides. Perhaps it's easier on the right side because gravity is gently pulling the right side with assistance. Tethering your breath to the pulsation of the pelvic floor for 2 more breaths. To come out of the twist, the spinal twist, we would come onto the hands and walk the hands back towards your body, and then change the direction of your knees so that you're sitting in the opposite side saddle and rest your right ankle in the medial arch of your left foot. Take your hands either side of the bolster, unpeel the spine onto the bolster, either turning your head towards your knees or forehead facing downwards, or turning your head away from the knees so that you can complete the twist. Whichever feels better for you, and if pregnant, keep the face on the same side as your knees. And once again, tune into the pelvic floor area. Noticing here how it's the left pelvic floor that is actually being gravitationally assisted, and the right side is working against gravity. So that as you inhale, you're softening, and as you exhale, you're drawing the pelvic floor towards your spine, noticing how gravity will either assist this action or not. Tethering the breath to 2 more pelvic floor actions. And then coming back towards the torso with the hands, walking the hands back towards you. And then we're coming into a supported prone lying position to finish. So up on all fours, slide the bolster towards you. Take the knees either side of the bolster and gently walk the hands down. So the knees are either side of the bolster. The pubic bone rests on the very edge of the bolster. We're just coming into a gentle prone lying position for a few breaths here with a slight tip of the pelvic floor towards gravity. So gravitational assistance, this is a very slight inversion. The pressure of your bolster just reminds the abdominal, the lower abdominals and the area around the pubic bone to hold gentle steadiness in the pelvic floor, softening as gravity supports the pelvic floor to draw back towards the spine, especially on your exhalation. You may need more height under your pubic bone. If you need more height, you would place a pillow and the pubic bone over the pillow. And this will actually have the effect of increasing the height of your pelvis. So we're supported in the slight inverted position. This is a wonderful way also for us to gain access to the pelvic floor muscles around the back of the body, so around the anus. Noticing an expansion as you inhale, a light contraction towards the spine on your exhale. And then walking the hands back towards you, coming back onto all fours, turning your bolster now widthwise and coming into a lovely supported Shavasana for a few moments. Letting your spine soften and settle into the supporting surface. Feeling the breath free and easy as it can travel now the whole length of the torso, and so that your pelvis can receive the breath. Feeling the breath breathing you now as you are so completely surrendered and relaxed that you can actually feel the breath having its way with you. You're getting out of your own way. You're allowing the breath to reach you deeply. You're allowing the breath to travel the length of the spine and to inhabit all areas of the pelvis now. You're welcome to stay here, or for those of us that would like to come out of the posture, we'll wriggle the fingers and the toes, and we'll lightly stretch the arms above the head. Roll onto your right side and rest on the right upper arm for a few breaths. Press up into sitting and come into a cross-legged seated position. Hands at the center of the chest, bowing the head, giving thanks to yourself for showing up for the practices today. Namaste. Have a wonderful day. I hope you enjoyed the class, and please enjoy the meditation practices and the other practical exercises that come with this course. Lots of love to you. Namaste.